Welcome back to Everyday Tech Explained. Today, we're going to be diving into the world of foldable phones
Okay.
with the Tecno Phantom V Fold 2.
Interesting.
Now, you might be wondering, Tecno who?
Yeah.
And we're here to tell you. We gleaned all the information we're about to discuss from a 9 to 5 Google review. That's where we're getting this from.
Yeah.
We're going to help you understand if this surprisingly affordable foldable phone
Okay.
deserves your attention.
Well, what's interesting here is Tecno, a brand that's really known for budget-friendly devices,
Right.
is taking on the big players in the premium foldable market.
Yeah.
And they're doing it with a price tag that undercuts the competition by a significant margin.
Yeah. At $1,099, it's hundreds less than
Right.
Samsung's Z Fold series
Yeah.
or the Google Pixel Fold. But as we know, a lower price often means compromises.
Right.
So let's unpack what those might be.
Yeah, one of the first things to consider is the processor.
Right.
The Phantom V Fold 2 uses the MediaTek Dimensity 9000 Plus,
Okay.
which was a flagship level chip back in 2022,
Yeah.
but isn't quite as powerful as the latest processors on the market.
Right. The review compared it to Google's Tensor G4, which is in their current Pixel phones.
Yeah.
Not exactly cutting edge, but they did say it handled everyday tasks and multitasking smoothly.
Yeah, and that's a key point, I think, for most people using their phone for social media, browsing, and even some light gaming.
Mm-hmm.
The performance difference won't be all that noticeable.
Right.
But if you're a power user pushing the phone to its limits,
Yeah.
you might want to consider a device with a newer chip.
Okay, so performance-wise, it seems like a solid, if not spectacular, performer.
Right.
But what about the design? After all, aesthetics matter too, especially with a foldable that's meant to turn heads.
Well, the review actually praised the design, comparing it favorably to last year's Xiaomi Mix Fold 3.
Okay.
They specifically highlighted the unique rear panel finish. It's a sort of metallic camo.
Ooh, interesting.
Yeah, sounds pretty eye-catching.
I'm picturing it now. It's always cool when these manufacturers play with these different textures and finishes.
Yeah.
But let's talk about the elephant in the room with any foldable, the hinge.
Right.
How does it hold up?
Well, this is where we see one of those compromises.
Okay.
The reviewer noted that the hinge mechanism isn't as flexible as what you'd find on a Samsung or Google foldable.
Okay.
So you can't really use the phone half open for things like watching a video hands-free or using it in a laptop configuration.
That's a bummer.
Yeah.
I mean, those half-open modes can be really useful.
Yeah, definitely.
Okay, but what about the displays themselves?
Right.
That's arguably the biggest selling point of a foldable.
Right.
Having two screens in one device.
Right.
What do they say about that?
The reviewer was actually quite pleased with the displays. Both the inner and outer screens are 120 Hz LTPO OLEDs,
Wow.
which means they're smooth, bright, and responsive.
Nice.
They did mention a noticeable crease on the inner display, but that's pretty typical with current foldable technology.
Yeah, that crease seems to be a persistent challenge
Right.
for foldable manufacturers.
Yeah.
But it sounds like the overall quality of the displays is pretty good.
Yeah, definitely.
Did they mention anything else about the design? Any quirks or surprises?
There was one rather peculiar observation.
Oh,
The reviewer pointed out that the front screen has a very uneven design.
okay.
One side is curved while the other has these squared off edges. They said it looks a bit odd.
Wow, that's a choice. I'm trying to imagine what that would look
Yeah.
and feel like in practice.
Yeah.
It definitely sounds different. Okay, so we've covered price, performance, and design. Let's move on to the software side of things. What's the story there?
This is where it gets interesting.
Okay.
The Tecno Phantom V Fold 2 runs on HiOS, which is Tecno's own Android skin.
Ah, another Android skin.
I know what you're thinking,
Yeah.
but the reviewer actually had some positive things to say about it.
Really? I have to admit, I'm curious.
Yeah.
What did they like about it?
They said it reminded them of early Huawei EMUI. Okay.
Which, before Huawei faced those US sanctions, was actually a pretty well-regarded Android skin.
Uh-huh.
So it seems like Tecno has taken some inspiration from what worked well in the past
Right.
and implemented it in their own way.
Interesting.
Yeah.
But I'm guessing there's a catch somewhere.
You know,
Yeah.
the biggest disappointment is the software update schedule.
Okay.
Tecno is only promising 3 years of updates,
Wow.
meaning the phone will only get updated to Android 16.
Hmm.
That's a major drawback.
Yeah.
Especially for a phone costing over $1,000.
Yeah, 3 years of updates just doesn't cut it these days. especially for a premium device.
I agree.
It makes you wonder about their long-term commitment to this
Yeah.
phone.
Yeah, absolutely.
Speaking of the future, let's talk about battery life. How does the Phantom V Fold 2 hold up in that department?
Well, it packs a pretty hefty 5,750 milliamp battery,
Okay.
which sounds promising,
Yeah?
but battery life is notoriously difficult to judge based on specs alone.
What do the reviewers say about their real-world usage?
Yeah.
Their experience was a bit mixed. They consistently got 6-7 hours of screen time,
Okay.
which is respectable, but not exceptional given the large battery capacity.
Yeah.
It seems like those two displays can really drain the battery, even with the power-saving features of the newer OLED technology.
Right.
Yeah.
That makes sense. Foldables are still a relatively new category, and there's probably still room for improvement when it comes to optimizing battery life.
Definitely.
Okay, so it's not a battery life champion, but it's not terrible either.
Right.
Now let's talk about the camera.
Okay.
How does it perform?
Surprisingly well, actually. The reviewer was quite impressed with the camera quality, especially given the phone's price.
Good.
They said it handles various lighting conditions well and produces these rich, saturated images.
I always get a little wary when a company focuses so heavily on the price,
Right.
because it often means they're cutting corners
Right.
on the camera.
Yeah.
But it sounds like Tecno didn't skimp in that department.
No, not at all.
Good.
At least according to this review.
Did they mention any downsides to the camera?
They did note that it struggles a bit with moving subjects,
Okay.
which is a common issue with smartphone cameras.
Right.
But there's also a rather odd issue where photos appeared soft and out of focus when viewed in Tecno's AI Gallery app.
Wait, so the camera's taking blurry photos?
No, that's the weird part.
Okay.
The same photos looked perfectly fine in Google Photos.
Oh.
So it seems like it might be a software quirk with Tecno's Gallery app rather than an actual problem with the camera hardware.
That's strange.
Yeah.
It makes you wonder how such a glaring issue could slip through the cracks. Hopefully they can fix that with a software update.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because if the camera hardware is as good as the reviewer suggests,
Yeah.
it would be a shame to see it hampered by software issues.
For sure.
Okay, so we've covered a lot of ground here. Price, performance, design, software, battery, and camera. What's the overall verdict? Is the Tecno Phantom V Fold 2 worth it?
That's the million-dollar question.
Right.
And it's not an easy one to answer
Yeah.
because this phone presents a unique set of trade-offs.
On the one hand, you've got this incredibly tempting price for a foldable phone. It's significantly cheaper than anything from Samsung or Google.
Yeah.
But then you have these compromises like the limited software updates and the hinge that's not as versatile.
Exactly. It really boils down to your priorities as a consumer.
Right.
Are you the type of person who wants the absolute latest and greatest technology and is willing to pay a premium for it?
Yeah.
Or are you more value conscious and looking for a good enough experience
I
at a
know, man.
more accessible price point?
I think this phone raises some interesting questions about the future of the foldable market.
Yeah.
We've always assumed that foldables would be these ultra premium devices
Right.
with top-of-the-line specs
Yeah.
and price tags to match. But the Tecno Phantom V Fold 2
Yeah.
suggests that maybe there's room for a
Uh-huh.
more budget-friendly tier of foldables.
What's fascinating here is that Tecno hasn't just cut corners to achieve that lower price point.
Right.
They've actually delivered some impressive features,
Yeah.
like that surprisingly capable camera.
Right.
It seems like they've made some strategic choices about where to allocate resources, prioritizing certain aspects over others.
It's like they're asking, what if we focus on delivering a solid foldable experience without necessarily needing the absolute best processor
Right.
or the longest software update cycle?
Exactly.
A gamble, for sure, but it could pay off if they can convince consumers that the trade-offs are worth it.
And it's a gamble that could disrupt the market.
Yeah.
If Tecno can successfully carve out a space for themselves in the budget-friendly foldable segment,
Right.
it could put pressure on the bigger players
Right.
to reassess their pricing strategy.
Right. It might force Samsung and Google to consider offering more affordable foldable options, which would be great for consumers.
Exactly.
More competition usually leads to better prices and more innovation.
Exactly. And speaking of innovation, let's circle back to that unusual front screen design.
Oh, yeah.
It's definitely a head scratcher. Curved on one side,
Yeah.
squared off on the other.
I know.
It sounds a bit jarring.
I'm still trying to wrap my head around it.
Yeah.
Is there a functional reason for that, or is it purely an aesthetic choice?
It's hard to tell without actually holding the phone. and seeing how it feels in hand.
Right.
Perhaps they were trying to achieve a certain ergonomic feel
Yeah.
or improve grip,
Yeah.
or maybe it was an attempt to visually distinguish the phone from the competition.
Right.
Whatever the reason, it definitely highlights the fact that manufacturers are still experimenting with foldable designs,
Yeah.
trying to find that perfect balance between form and function.
Yeah. It's a reminder that we're still in the early days of foldable technology. There's a lot of room for improvement and a lot of different approaches being explored.
Right.
It's an exciting time to be watching this space evolve.
Absolutely. But as with any new technology, there are going to be some growing pains.
Right.
And those 3-year software updates are a definite concern.
Yeah.
Even if the phone is performing well today,
Mm.
who's to say what the software experience will be like
Right.
a few years down the line?
It's a valid point, and it highlights the importance of thinking about the long term when making a tech purchase.
Yeah.
Are you comfortable with the idea that your phone might not be getting the latest software updates
Yeah.
or security patches after a few years?
Right. It's a trade-off that buyers will have to weigh carefully.
For sure.
Now, let's touch upon that camera quirk we mentioned earlier.
Okay.
The fact that photos appear soft and out of focus in Tecno's AI Gallery app, but look fine in Google Photos, is just bizarre.
Yeah, it's definitely strange. It suggests that there's something going awry with Tecno's image processing software. Perhaps they're over-processing the images in an attempt to enhance certain details, but it's backfiring and resulting in lower quality photos.
Yeah, it's a reminder that software can be just as important as hardware when it comes to the overall user experience. Even if you have a fantastic camera sensor, if the software processing isn't up to par, it can negatively impact the quality of your photos.
That's true. Hopefully Tecno can address this issue with the software update, because it would be a shame if such a capable camera was being held back by a software glitch.
I agree. It'll be interesting to see how they respond to this feedback and whether they can improve the camera software in the future.
Right.
Because at the end of the day, a great camera is a key selling point for any smartphone, especially in today's visually driven world.
So here we are, we've explored the Tecno Phantom V Fold 2. Its impressive price point, the compromises that come with it, and the questions it raises about the future of foldable phones. What do you think about this foldable? Is it a contender in the market, or do the downsides outweigh the appeal?
Are you in the market for a foldable phone? Or maybe you already have one.
Head down to the comments and let us know. We love hearing from you. And don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe to Everyday Tech Explained for more in-depth discussions like this one. See you next time.